Bring me pictures of Spider-Man!
I want Spider-Man! The topic for today is all about Spider-Man. I've teamed up with my good friend Alec, and we're going to ask each other several questions about our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But first, Alec, would you mind telling me about your history with Spider-Man?
So, I've always been a big fan of Spider-Man. We watched all the movies growing up, read the comics. I enjoyed a lot of the cartoons. I've always was a fan of a superhero that just made sense. He's just a regular dude. So, I've always loved Spider-Man.
Well, to go ahead and start out our questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, what is your favorite cinematic Spider-Man?
See, this is a controversial question, and of which I have two answers. So, if we're talking our favorite Spider-Man, that's Andrew Garfield, 100%. Andrew Garfield fully encapsulated, in my opinion, what is the neighborhood Spider-Man. He was quirky, he was funny, he had lots of quips, he was always around doing what he needed to do to protect his city. But it's not just Spider-Man, it's Peter Parker. And in my opinion, he was too cool to be Peter Parker. Skateboarding through the halls and, immediately dating Gwen Stacy. I mean, he was a little too cool. The best Peter Parker, by a large margin, is Tobey Maguire. Unbeatable performance. His acting, which is great, but has a quality to it, and Sam Raimi's writing really just made Peter Parker...
So would you say this favorite cinematic Spider-Man in general would be Peter Parker? I mean, I'm sorry, not Peter Parker, would be...
Oh yeah, Peter Parker's my favorite. Definitely the best
Peter Parker's
Spider-Man.
Easily, yeah.
Overall, my favorite Spider-Man franchise would probably be the original trilogy with Tobey Maguire. Because he did play a very good Spider-Man. He encapsulated that character very well. It was funny. The writing was here and there, which I love. Spider-Man
Early 2000s.
So good. So good. What about you? What's your favorite cinematic Spider-Man?
So honestly, my opinion, personally, was Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And I kind of have the same reasons you do, but then I would also kind of say that he also was a decent Peter Parker to a fault. I'll explain that in a second. So the reason why I think in the suit he is the quintessential Spider-Man is he displays all the mannerisms that you expect out of Spider-Man. He's got your quips, he's got your one-liners, his speech patterns even mimic just this frenetic pace. His movement inside of the suit, because you know Andrew Garfield has Broadway experience and stuff, so he's able to fully encapsulate what it's like to be Spider-Man inside the suit. He's expressive, he's bold. The free-flowing movement that he has kind of reminds me of the Insomniac Spider-Man game, where he's very loose and acrobatic. And then also...
yeah, borderline ragdoll.
Borderline ragdoll, yeah. But you really get the sense that he is just a teenager that is having the time of his life. I think the suit also, especially in Amazing Spider-Man 2, is the best and most comic accurate Spider-Man suit we've gotten yet. And I'm standing by that because it's got that rubbery latex feel, but yet also has those big bug eyes that are just straight from the comics. I genuinely think that that suit is the best in the game, no question. Now, why I think he might be a better Peter Parker... I'm not saying the Peter Parker that he plays is great, but I think what kind of gives it a little bit of a boost is if you really go back to the early Spider-Man comics, that Peter Parker was kind of a D-bag. He kind of was rude to people. He was very short, very edgy, very living life on the edge kind of thing, kind of take no craps from anybody. And I think that that was probably the Spider-Man that Andrew Garfield studied when he was preparing for his role. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I think his edginess, although it was a little excessive sometimes, I still think that was a good portrayal of Peter Parker. And that's just what I think.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how edgy he is, because it will never be as forcibly edgy as Spider-Man 3.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm glad you mentioned the suit. I think that Andrew Garfield's suit was awesome. They kind of modernized what Spider-Man is, without leaving the concept, like we see a lot of superheroes and villains do nowadays. I mean, look at No Way Home and Electro. Nothing like the comic. I will say, I'm excited for the next iteration of Tom Holland, whenever he shows back up at the very end of No Way Home. Spoilers. We do see that Tom gets a cool new suit that looks exactly like the comics should, which was really exciting.
Which has the potential to be the best Spider-Man suit yet. We just need more time with it.
Exactly.
Which leads perfectly into the next topic, which is your personal favorite Spider-Man movie. Take it away.
Jonah, I'm going to let you guess on this one.
You're going to let me guess.
What's my favorite Spider-Man movie?
No Way Home.
No Way Home, objectively, was an incredible movie. It was, honestly, probably one of the best iterations of Spider-Man ever. But I think it's unfair to judge that one because we're getting all three Spider-Men. That's the culmination of Spider-Man to date.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can. It's like saying your favorite Marvel movie is Endgame.
Right.
Endgame was a great movie, but is it great because it's great, or is it great because it's a team-up movie? Favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, excluding No Way Home, we're looking at Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire.
Really?
Absolutely love it.
All right, explain yourself.
I know. It is so good. Venom in that movie is awesome. I like how they called back to the comics when Eddie Brock was in the cathedral and got the symbiote off of him using the cathedral bells. It was a great call out to the comics. I think that Tobey Maguire's performance in it, it gets a lot of hate, but it was exactly as written. And he played his part perfectly.
Because Sam Raimi did say in interviews that he wanted him to be what he thought a cool person would be, which is not a cool person at all.
Not at all. I'm resisting the urge right now to get up and do the dance. It is a great movie. We follow multiple different characters throughout it. We get to see huge character development from Peter Parker. We watch him try too hard to be the good guy, give up, and fall into being the bad guy, that D-bag that you were talking about. But it's under the influence of the symbiote. The symbiote is so freaking cool, dude. Probably why it's my favorite movie. The final fight scene of that movie is just a culmination of all those three movies to the end. You get a bunch of callbacks. You get to see a lot of people you've seen before. And I just think it was choreographed fantastic. A lot of superhero movies have these big fight scenes at the end. Or some recent Marvel shows, not going to point any fingers at Moon Knight. They have really iffy final fight scenes. As far as final fight scenes go, I feel like not many movies can top Spider-Man 3.
I respect that, because I will say, even though I didn't quite have Spider-Man 3 as high on my list, I still appreciate
Most people don't.
I was about to say, and I respect that, because the best part about having opinions is that everybody's got one. I say that in every video I have because it needs to be continuously reminded, or you need to continuously remind people that it's great to have your own opinion.
Exactly.
Now, for my favorite Spider-Man movie, I would say...
Wait. You gotta let me ask. Jonah, what is your favorite Spider-Man movie?
I would say my favorite Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man 2. And I know it's kind of a cop-out. I know it's pretty easy to say. And I think I have to clarify. Spider-Man 2 is the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2, not any of the other Spider-Man 2s.
Tobey Maguire. Yep. Doc Ock, all that cool stuff.
Correct. I personally believe that this movie is a cinematic masterpiece. I believe that all of the characters in this movie are fully fleshed out, which you don't get to see a lot. I think that every character in this movie had a purpose. You could tell that Sam Raimi wanted the actors that he got when it came to Alfred Molina and any of the other side characters that were in there. You get to fully see J. Jonah Jameson just be the hilarious just dude that he is. But I also think that they also show Spider-Man at his weakest. I know this kind of subject is a topic that a lot of movies kind of shy away from when it comes to Peter struggling with the responsibilities that he's continuously accepting. And I think that this all accumulates perfectly with him abandoning his suit in the alleyway with that iconic shot that actually lines up perfectly with the Spider-Man No More comic. I forgot from what era it was from, but it was definitely an older comic where it shows Peter crumbling under the weight of his responsibility and choosing to forego his life as Spider-Man to try to be a normal person, which again leads to a great payoff in the end where he comes back and is even more heroic than before. And he has to be in order to face up against Dr. Octopus, who is played perfectly by Alfred Molina. And it is just a perfect cinematic superhero movie.
No, I agree. You get to see his kind of fall from grace, saying, why does it have to be me? Why does it have to be me? Why do I have to do this? And you get to see him give up his mantle. But he picks it back up. And when he picks it back up, at least for me, he's picking it back up for the right reasons for the first time. Because we see him in Spider-Man 1 and the first part of Spider-Man 2, and he's being Spider-Man, but it's really, you get the inclination he's doing it mostly out of guilt, trying to make the world a better place to atone for the mistake he made for Uncle Ben. But it's not until he picks the mantle back up in Spider-Man 2 when he's doing it not out of guilt, not out of shame, but to genuinely make the world a better place because he has that power and he has that responsibility.
And I would go ahead and add on to that, just to throw another random Marvel property out of thin air. This is extremely similar to Daredevil in the sense of you don't see, and by Daredevil I mean the Disney Plus, well now it's Disney Plus, formerly Netflix TV show, where you don't see Matt Murdock in the suit that much, but when he is, you can feel that gravitas, that iconic imagery that you don't normally get to have. And I think not having Peter in the suit for most of Spider-Man 2 made it so that when he was in the suit, it made it twice as special and it made it more memorable. Now, going on to number 3, I'm going to go ahead and pitch this to you. What is your favorite on-screen Spider-Man romance and why?
I hear that question and I raise you this. What is your favorite Spider-Man on-screen romance and why?
Oh, so you're pitching it to me first.
Yes, sir.
I like it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go with Gwen Stacy from the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
That's the wrong answer, but continue.
Well, then here's why I think so, and hopefully I'm clear and concise in what I think. So this is a relationship I bought into the most when it came to all of the different relationships. I believe the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone was incredible. I mean, partly because they were dating in real life, you can really feel the electricity between the two of them. Personally, I think you can see several instances where they work really well together as a couple. One thing that comes to mind is I think it was in Amazing Spider-Man 2 where Peter Parker has to distract a bunch of security guards from finding out where Gwen Stacy is so that she can get to the elevator in time. You just see him doing a bunch of hijinks, and she's just kind of looking at him and rolling her eyes like, oh, there he goes again. And you just see their eyes, in a way, kind of smile to each other, and they communicate with each other in a way that feels natural and it feels real. And I really appreciate that because it could have been super wooden. It could have been, especially because they were kind of delving away from the whole MJ thing, it could have been something that felt very forced, but I really, really enjoy their on-screen back and forth where they have the cute little glances and the time spent together. Yes, it's eye-rolling, but they make it entertaining because of how much they were really into each other. And I think this also leads into the perfect ending to Amazing Spider-Man 2. Love that movie or hate it. I don't care what you think about it. I believe that final scene of Gwen dying after Goblin pushes her out of the clock tower, I think that is pure cinematic Spider-Man at its finest. And that's kind of dark because it's literally someone dying, but you feel that death. You see it through Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man's eyes. You get invested in it.
That's one of those moments in the movie theater that you don't forget.
Absolutely. And to be honest, every time I rewatch that movie and that scene plays, a tear comes to my eye. My eyes get a little watery because Andrew Garfield sells the ever-loving heck out of it. He is on his knees holding her, weeping and crying, and you really feel it. He is giving everything he has, and it's not hard for you to believe that he loves her with every fiber of his being. So personally, that's why I think Emma Stone is the best on-screen romance.
Well, let's explore a different option, shall we?
What you got?
I'm a big fan of Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. I really did like the chemistry and the relations they had. For me, at least, it's probably the one you're not expecting. I think it's gotta be Michelle from Tom Holland.
All right, well, tell me what you got.
I refuse to elaborate.
That's it? We're just gonna go Zendaya? So
it's Zendaya. Right? 2,
we can
I liked it a lot. Because let's look at Sam Raimi's Spider-Man for a second. The drama is there. The drama is there consistently between him and MJ. But whether it's because of this or that, the drama is always there. The stuff jump to Andrew Garfield and Gwen Stacy. The drama is always there. It's a different type of drama, but they're hiding. They're hiding from her dad not to know he's Spider-Man. She's, dying. They're having all their issues, whatever. For me, at least, the drama that comes with Tom Holland and Zendaya, or Peter Parker and Michelle, it feels more natural. It doesn't feel like I'm watching a movie. It's not like overhyped and overplayed. Their relationship seems very down to earth, like any of us would really want.
Kind of like a high school sweetheart kind of thing.
Exactly. We're not looking at life and death situations every 20 seconds. We're not looking at, I can't be with you because of my responsibility. We're seeing two kids who like each other. They go on a trip out of the country. They go catch bad guys. There's the romance there. There's the drama there, yes, but it's not over the top. It doesn't feel like I'm watching a rom-com. Because Sam Raimi, I love those, again, favorite Spider-Man trilogy, but the drama there is just so
Oh my
high.
gosh. Okay,
It's just
so
turned all the way up.
the relationship between Peter Parker and MJ in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, I think it's the most overrated because it's really hard to buy into the fact that they love each other because MJ does some mean stuff to Peter.
I have a hot take.
We're here for it.
MJ is a great character, played very well. Peter Parker deserved better. He should have just moved on.
In the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Should have just moved on.
Do you think that he should have, maybe in Spider-Man 4, do you think they should have tried to bring in the whole Gwen Stacy route?
Probably not. Only because we'd already seen Gwen Stacy at this point.
True.
And the chemistry just felt really awkward. I think that a solo Spider-Man would have been cool in Spider-Man 4.
Like no relationship, not tied down.
Mm-hmm. It's focusing on Spider-Man. Being Spider-Man, what that means to him and what that means to the city. But, that's not going to make it in Hollywood or as a blockbuster or anything like that.
Well, no,
gotta have the drama in there, gotta spice it up.
Every
that was before MCU was really around, and that was nowadays they just make a movie and they make it how they want it to be. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to check any boxes. I think that's a problem with the old Spider-Man trilogies. I had to check so many boxes to get people interested because not everybody was super interested in comic books at the time.
Or comic book movies.
No, exactly.
So going on to number 4, what would you say would be your favorite Spider-Man villain?
I have a lot to say on this one.
I'm excited.
So I did foreshadow it a little bit.
Okay.
Venom is the coolest, and honestly, I would probably go out and say that Venom is probably my favorite Marvel villain of all time.
That's not even a hot take.
Venom is very popular, yes, but he's so cool for so many different reasons. I mean, the portrayal on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 was awesome. Topher Grace cracked me up. I thought it was a great... His portrayal was he did it very well. Played that edgy side of Venom, feeding into that temptation of power. But Venom in the comics is so much more than what he's ever been portrayed on screen. Mm-hmm. If we look at Tom Hardy's Venom, they do the sort of comic relief, kind of buddy cop system. Mm-hmm. But again, there's so much more to him. So let's talk about Venom for a second. Venom is a symbiote, came from space, he's an alien. He's this black goop. So Venom, at first, was Peter Parker. He got the black suit in the original comic series, started noticing weird things, take it to Reed Richards. Reed Richards tells him it's alive. Peter Parker gets rid of it. And where does it go next? Everyone's classic Venom, Eddie Brock. Mm-hmm. Eddie Brock is Venom to everybody. He is the wild, malicious fighter. Always
unpredictable?
Thank you, yes. Very unpredictable, very chaotic. And that's where Venom really becomes Venom. I mean, there's a distinction in the comics where the symbiote itself starts to refer to itself as Venom. Mm-hmm. It takes on somewhat of a sentience. Right. So Eddie Brock has it for a long time. Peter Parker kicks his butt, or Spider-Man kicks his butt, and on the top of the cathedral, they bang all the bells, and the symbiote gets released from Eddie Brock. But it doesn't end there. Where does it go next, Jonah?
Are you talking about in the movies?
No, in the comics, because it's cool. The next person to get Venom is Matt Gargan.
Scorpion.
Yes. Scorpion.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
becomes Venom. Mm-hmm. And that's just super cool. He goes on to be the, what's it called? The Sinister Spider-Man?
Yeah.
part of the Sinister 12. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on to do that, and he becomes Spider-Man. And then cracks me up. He gets bored of it and gets rid of it.
Mm-hmm. He's like, this ain't for me.
He's like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to being Scorpion. That was cooler.
Well, and also think about all the awesome offspring that have come from Venom. You've got Shriek, you've got Carnage. You know, you've got, like you said, you've got Matt Gargan. You've got all of these different symbiotes that have all come from Venom. Venom is basically the number one product that has been facilitating all of these different villains and anti-heroes. I mean, you've also got Anti-Venom, which is personally one of my favorite offsprings, just because of his type of power set.
Venom is cool, dude. I've got two more I want to share because I think it's crazy. So Venom at this point I see Venom as the symbiote. So when I say my favorite villain is Venom, it's not Eddie Brock, it's not Matt Gragan, it is the symbiote itself. Yeah, right. Flash Thompson becomes a host for the symbiote, which is crazy to me. This is one of the coolest things in Marvel. Flash Thompson goes and fights in Iraq, and he loses his legs in Iraq. And when he comes back to the States, he gets Venom. And Venom, using biomaterial, basically recreates his legs so that he can walk again. But Flash controls Venom for 48 hours at a time using drug suppressors that stop the symbiote from taking control of him. And over the course of this time, Venom starts to play the hero with him. Because he doesn't use Venom as a villain. He uses him and works for the military. Which is awesome. As Agent Venom. I just think it's awesome. Venom is so cool. Like you were saying, all the different offspring of Venom. He could be his own category. He's not just a villain. He is a breed of villains. And the next iteration it goes to, Venom tries to be the hero still. But Lee Price, the next iteration, exactly. It shows that Venom is more than just a goo. He is a sentient, conscious being who tries to continue being the good guy after leaving Flash Thompson, but is forced to be a villain again by Lee Price. And that is the end of my rant. Venom is so cool.
And a wonderful rant it was.
Thank you. Jonah, what is your favorite Spider-Man villain?
It's going to sound like an easy cop-out, but man, you just can't go wrong with Green Goblin. You really can't go wrong. It sounds
Venom. Like a cop-out because it's so good.
At the end of the day, Venom is so cool. I love Venom just as much as you do. But for me, Green Goblin is what takes it to that next level. And I think what took it there for me was the absolute iconic portrayal by Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, chef's kiss.
You think of the Goblin, you think of Willem Dafoe. Now, as much as I want to say that I consider Tom Hardy to be Eddie Brock, I still need a little bit more time. He didn't immediately step in and immediately become the definitive Eddie Brock and Venom. I think when Willem Dafoe stepped into the role, without even a doubt, he became Green Goblin, and everybody knew it too. I think that his portrayal of the cackling, sadistic, ruthless parasite that's taken over Norman Osborn's mind is what really sets it apart for me. And if you go back and do some digging into the comics, again, just like Venom, there's other variations of the Goblin. You've got the Hobgoblin, who is Ned Leeds, Peter Parker's friend. You've got the Red Goblin, which is the darkest and most sinister version of Goblin, the one that had been corrupted by the Carnage symbiote.
Exactly. I was about to say, there's a symbiote again.
Exactly. And so you see the symbiote getting involved in other things. But what truly unlocks that power for the Red Goblin once connected with the symbiote is Willem Dafoe's mind. Willem Dafoe. See, again, that's how iconic he is. Like, I messed up his name. Norman Osborn is a genius. Norman Osborn has been, time and time again, the perfect foil for Peter Parker. And whenever you think of Peter Parker, you think of Norman Osborn. Just like you think of Mr. Fantastic and you think of Doctor Doom. These are two people who constantly butt heads, and Peter Parker doesn't win every time. Norman Osborn has also had his share of victories. And I think that when it comes to the costume, I think it is one of the most sinister looking and one of the most fearsome out there. I also believe that his iconic laugh, again, whenever I read the comics now, I always hear Willem Dafoe's laugh whenever I see a speech bubble of the Goblin cackling. There's just no two ways about it. And so when it comes to being a sheer icon for me, that's why I gotta go with Green Goblin. So now we have one final question for each other. And this is a question that neither Alec nor myself have prepared for. We prepared a question for the other person, but we have no idea what the other person's going to ask us. So we are going to go ahead and start with the question I've prepared for Alec. And my question for you, good sir, is do you think that the MCUification of Spider-Man has come with the potential risk of the character losing what's made him so intriguing for decades?
100%. Don't even finish the question.
All right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
go for it.
Spider-Man, like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, the reason I love Spider-Man and the reason Stan Lee created Spider-Man in the first place is he was one of the first superheroes who was just a regular dude. He was just a completely poor dude living out of a tiny apartment, eating day-old pizza, helping people because he had the ability to do so. That's all. We got to see his darker side. We got to see his D-bag side, like you said earlier. We got to see his struggles. We got to see his depression. We got to see every aspect of Peter Parker and how that made Spider-Man. Whereas in the MCU, the first time we see Spider-Man, now this is nothing against Tom Holland. Tom Holland's performance is incredible.
Absolutely.
But the first time we see him, he's fighting the Avengers. He's already taking on more than any Spider-Man in the cinematic history has before.
Mm-hmm.
From the very moment he shows up on screen. Just a kid. We see him kick butt the whole time. And we see him transition from there. He goes into fighting the Vulture. It's pretty standard Spider-Man stuff, but relying on Stark tech. Mm. And then we go into seeing him fight Mysterio and dealing with the Kree and these world-ending events. And
Infinity
then boom.
War, Endgame.
Exactly. I did mess up the timeline there.
That's
we
okay.
see Spider-Man do so much, which is clear. If you see No Way Home, there's a conversation, spoiler alert, between all three iterations of Spider-Man, where he said that he's been to space, and the other two were like, what? You've been to space? Because Spider-Man doesn't do that, man. Now, as the Spider-Man character they created in the MCU did an incredible job. And that Spider-Man is incredibly cool. And I love Tom Holland's performance of it. But it's not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Tom Holland has never been your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is what Spider-Man was created to be.
I personally believe that he did kind of slide into that MCU assembly, and it just kind of turned into a copy and paste thing. Again, like you said, I have no problem with Tom Holland. I think he, for what he was given, nailed it. No discussion. However, I personally, on a positive note, I do believe that the next trilogy of Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, if they happen, will either prove this theory right or prove it wrong. Because I think they're about to come to a crossroads with Spider-Man being on his own. Maybe now we'll finally get to see that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Exactly.
As long as the MCU embraces Spider-Man for who he really is, and maybe these first three movies were just his origin story, and now we get to see what you said that we were looking for.
Exactly. At the end of No Way Home, we get to see Spider-Man, Peter Parker, return to his roots in a dingy little apartment with a homemade suit, and he is fighting crime off of a police scanner on his phone. Now, I love, again, I can't say it enough, I really do love Tom Holland's performance as Spider-Man. The writing was incredible, his performance was incredible, and his position in the MCU, the MCU would not be the same without him. At all.
I agree.
But I am incredibly excited to see Tom Holland reprise his role of Spider-Man in upcoming films and potentially play the down-to-earth neighborhood Spider-Man. All right, Jonah, here's the question for you.
What you got?
You have to take up the mantle of a villain in Spider-Man.
Okay.
But you're going to use their powers and their abilities to be a hero. Who do you choose and why?
Okay. Definitely wouldn't say something like Mysterio, because Mysterio's powers are all illusion based, and so they have
he's just a liar. That's all he is.
Yeah. No weight in the physical world. This is gonna my first response would be to say Venom, just because of all of the possibilities with the symbiote. However, we saw what happened in the beginning of the Venom movie when they tried to duplicate and they tried to use Venom's basically offspring and himself to create life. It didn't go well.
In the comics, we've already seen Venom as a hero, like we discussed.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that he's technically played the hero a couple times, but less often than not. I would say Dr. Otto Octavius.
Oh yeah? Why?
Because of his cybernetics. I would say because of the way his limbs work, I would say that would be a great help to society, because I could lend that technology, use that to create simple and more affordable things like artificial arms, artificial legs. I know my grandfather, before he passed away, he had an artificial knee, and those suckers are expensive. And so I think by getting that technology out there and being able to work with scientists, because if I'm Otto Octavius, I created it myself. And so I would want to be able to work with scientists to do good and to make it more accessible for the people that don't necessarily have access to it. It could be anything from a pacemaker. It could be, like I said, artificial arm, artificial leg. But I believe that that would help a lot of veterans, a lot of people who had, cancer, or people who lost limbs due to a freak accident. I think that would be a great help to society. Plus, I could also use my personal limbs to assist firefighters. I could, help out the police. I mean, shoot, I could just, help a kid who needs help getting a balloon, because I can't say Spider-Man because that's a hero. So I could still do some of the things Spider-Man can, just a lot slower.
I like it. I do see one flaw in your plan.
What you got?
You're gonna have to work on that inhibitor chip.
Oh, absolutely. But this is implying
you give
that I have
people
heroic tendencies.
artificial legs and arms, and they can start controlling
I will
them.
create a grand army subject to my will.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Jonah, for being a guest on my show, my podcast. I'm glad you could be here. I had a really great time. Guys, if you're made it to the very end of the video, we appreciate it. Go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe in the comment section. Go ahead and let me know who your favorite Spider-Man villain is. And I will catch you guys next time on the Cosmic Broadcast. See ya!
Honestly, that was done so much better than I think I ever can or will do.